Welcome. Scott here. Here is a quick boss guide for the upcoming LUFENIA Plus character event, Gentle Fist featuring Ursula from Final Fantasy IV. The other featured characters are Machina and Cinque, both from Final Fantasy Type 0 and Freya from Final Fantasy IX. This raid event also marks the debut of Ursula with her LD. We will be fighting 2 Killing Scissors which has 16 million HP each. They are immune to terror. The turn requirement is 50. The HP requirements is 5000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the time that the event was released for the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. Firstly, let's go through the LUFENIA Plus Orb conditions. The LUFENIA Plus has 2 activations, one at the 79% and the other one at 29%. The first activation will be activated at 49%. When activation is triggered, the boss will change its texture color from blue to green. To uptick the orb, you need to have a unit that grants target at least 100% max brave in one turn. The uptick is only 2 per skill use. Deploying a brave battery bot in the party is highly recommended. They are Ursula, Lena, Purim, Selphie, Cid Rains, and Ishtala. I have listed down the skills that will uptick the orb. For both Selphie and Purim, their HP plus will only uptick the orb if their brave is capped. Ishtala is a premium BT unit for this fight and she can easily uptick the orb with her Afflatus Misery. Make sure her BT aura is active along with 3 stacks of Blood Lily. On the right of the screen, I have listed down additional options. However, these units may require some setup to ensure their abilities meet the orb requirements. Other than battery bots, there are other units with multiple brave gains in their abilities. With proper setup, those abilities that can uptick the orb. For example, Machina can uptick the orb with his HP burst command as that attack have lots of brave gains in that ability. With his BT aura, Chaos can also uptick the orb with his S1 plus with brave gains that scales off HP dumps. If you are using Cid Rains, you can easily do boss no turns for the event. Now let's proceed with some party setup recommendations. Recommended calls abilities. To ensure that you are able to constantly break them, it is important to inflict defense down debuffs. Example of calls abilities that inflict defense down calls are Ferris, Jack and Titus. As the boss has a huge amount of HP damage up debuff calls like Karasame, Gavrin, Ignis, and Maria are useful. Although a bit trickier to use, Aura type HP damage up calls like Queen and Kimari are also viable. As mentioned in the previous slide, you need to have an ability to grant 100% max brave in a turn. Ursula base call and Rude LDCA are the confirmed options. Do note that Rude's call requires the party members to be in max HP. Amidadali on LDCA grants the party 80% max brave where you can cover the shortfall with brave gain up auras. As the orb is rather tight, it will be better off using units that constantly fulfill the orb in party than as a call. Next, I will be covering units that will be useful to handle the fight mechanics. Like other LUFENIA Plus events, it is always recommended to bring supports for their aura and buffs. They are Purim, Setzer, Agrias, Katsa, Ishtala, Bartz, Lena and Selphie. If you are playing the non-delay game, consider bring a damage mitigator is a must. Options include Snow, Core, Gladiolus, Warrior of Light, Orin, Zac, Nine and Beatrix. The boss has an AoE attack that does AoE delay. Thus, units who has counters or traps works better for the fight. For damage dealers, you can consider the following units: Machina, Chaos, Rains, Cloud of Darkness, Lon and Ren, Shantato, Titus, Vayne, Kane, Ace, Ursula, Tira, Tifa, Jegran, Garland, Cinque, Galbez, and Bon. As Rains could uptick the orb easily with his LD, EX, or even S2, you can cheese the fight with the infamous Sigma combo. Due to the orb requirements, Adaro cheese will most probably do not work for the fight. On the screen, you will see a timeline showing the HP thresholds triggers that you need to watch out for. Other than the standard LUFENIA Plus aura boosts, the boss will trigger a condition, Luminesced uncannily. Upon triggered, the orb will be activated and the boss will change its texture from blue to green. The boss will set all targets brave to 0 and grants a framed buff that grants 100% max brave to all targets. Although granting a buff is usually positive, for this battle, it will make your battery harder to meet to orb requirements. On the right side of the screen, you can see that the boss has a standard moveset rotation. I will discuss more in the later slides. Overall, this isn't a very hard fight as long as you have correct set of units to tackle it. The real issue is managing the orb and the turn count. Now let's proceed with the boss mechanics proper. Like the previous LUFENIA Plus fights, the boss will gain big stats boosts, brave damage, and brave gain reduction auras when you deplete their HP to a certain threshold. The thresholds trigger for this fight is at the start of the fight, 79% HP threshold and 49% HP thresholds. At the start of the fight, it will boost its defense stats by 200%. At 79% HP threshold, it will further boost its defense stats to 300%. The maximum brave damage reduction auras is 90%. The maximum brave gain reduction auras are 70%. To handle against the brave reduction auras, you can use brave damage up calls like Jack, Sephiroth, or bring a support that have brave damage up like Lena. Alternatively, you can also use the enchant and imperil strategy to hit the enemies for elemental weakness damage. Machina, the featured BT, has a very strong rework and he can finish up the fight very fast if you have him fully geared. He can easily uptick the orb with his HP burst plus thanks to multiple brave gain with his 7-hit combo attack. Ursula, the featured unit, will guarantee to uptick the orb with her S2 and she offers pretty nice utility for the party with her auras. Your party brave won't never go below 20% of their max brave as long as you keep her LD buff active. Now, I will be covering the boss key mechanics in detail. Upon activation at 79%, the boss will change its texture from blue to green. It will change back to blue again when its HP drops to 49%. It will change again to green when its HP is lowered 29%. When the mechanics are triggered, the boss will set all characters brave to 0 and grants them a framed buff with turn duration with 100% max brave. The mechanic is not a guaranteed hit attack. Try to trigger both of the auras together at the same. In normal circumstances, the framed buff may be nice to allow you do more damage, but it also makes your fight harder to achieve the max brave condition. You might want to consider remove max brave passive so it is easier to meet the condition. Unless you have an unit that can constantly uptick the orb, try to save your battery skills, summon phase, and burst phase for the thresholds. Now let's go over briefly on boss attack rotations. They start off with Rend, Hydro Shot on the following turn, and lastly Bubbly Out, an AoE HP attack that delays all allies. If they have high amounts of Brave, they will use Foot Stomp, a single target Brave attack. Rend is an AoE Brave attack that deals a framed 50% defense down debuff on all targets for 5 turns. Hydro Shot is a single target Water Brave attack that grants the boss 2 framed buffs, 50% defense up and speed up for 5 turns. As the boss will have 300% defense boost when the auras are at 49%. It might be in your best interests to bring a Dispeller to dispel them or block the buff slots with 8 framed debuffs. Bubbly Out is the boss' most dangerous attack. It deals an AoE Brave plus HP attack that delays all targets by a turn. As they are most probably lining up the attacks back to back, it might be better to have some form of off-turn damage like counter or traps mechanics to handle this. Do remember that the turn count is a tight 50 turns requirements along with the 5000 HP requirements. Now I have reached the slide of my boss guide presentation. There are 2 common approaches used by JP players when the event is initially released in JP version. The first approach is the hit and counter approach. The orb condition is quite tight. Having a unit that can constantly uptick up the orb is crucial. You can see a list of the characters who has the required skills that to uptick orb. Damage dealers that have multiple brave dumps with the correct setup can also uptick the orb. Examples are Machina and Chaos. Remember, abilities that withheld brave like Bart's BT or Iroha brave consumption reduction don't uptick the orb. It needs to be any ability that grants 100% max brave. The ability can be in the form of skills or special HP or brave command. For the second approach is the easy win approach. You can finish off the fight easily with Sigma combo. Just bring any battery support for the third member, or you can have Kane for firing lancets for off-turn damage. Most of Sid Rain's abilities will give you the ability to uptick the orb. As for Adaro Cheese, it is almost impossible to do it due to the orb requirements and the tight 50 turns count requirements. I have come to the end of my boss guide presentation. Hopefully you find it useful. If you like the video, please give a like. Please subscribe to my channel for future gaming content. Good luck for the fight tomorrow. Bye.